So the last week or so has been absolutely crazy. Not only are we trying to cram in every single achievement from the Master Chief Collection before Halo Infinite comes out, but a couple of days ago, 343 actually hooked Luke and I up with review copies of Halo Infinite, and as of today, we're officially allowed to talk about it and post our review of Halo Infinite, but of course, we didn't want to include spoilers and ruin it since we can put this review up before the game actually releases, so don't worry, this video will have absolutely no spoilers, just gameplay from random areas that we're allowed to show, and there's just little things that have already been revealed in trailers that 343 has put out already. So to start this off, let's get the main question out of the way. Is Halo Infinite a good game? Is the campaign well made? I think it's safe to say, after Luke and I compared notes on our experiences with Halo Infinite, we can truly say that this campaign is actually outstanding. We came in with very cautious and skeptical expectations, and we will say that the game did go as far as exceeding what we thought we would maybe be getting for this campaign, which is something we are incredibly happy about. Halo Infinite does a really interesting job where it kind of drops you into this story that has had things already happening for a while, and there's a lot of really unique mysteries and questions that you're already going to have about the story jumping right into the game for the first time, and as the story progresses, more of these mysteries start to become unraveled, and it was one thing that we really liked about the game, that when you're playing through the campaign, just completing a level and getting a little bit more of the story elaborated on, or getting to see some character interaction as a reward for beating a level, was a big motivator to make us want to continue to just play through the game and experience all that Halo Infinite had to offer. It's really captivating, and Halo Infinite does do a great job at developing characters that are actually somewhat three-dimensional. They all have this depth to them that give you reasons to like the character, or even reasons to dislike the character in some cases, but they all feel in one way or another very fleshed out. And then with returning characters like the Master Chief, for example, this iteration of the Master Chief feels the most consistent, to say the least, with the rest of the Halo franchise. I don't know, it's really tricky to explain Master Chief's character in Halo, or explain how he should be written in Halo stories, but overall, the way that Master Chief is portrayed in this game is one that definitely feels like a perfect balance of bringing the question of his humanity up, while also having him be a badass, silent hero that he truly is. No matter what Halo game you like the most, whether it's the more classic games like Halo 2's Master Chief, or maybe you really liked Halo 4's Master Chief that more explored his humanity side of things, this game finds a way to really bring out the best of both of these portrayals of Master Chief and kind of merge them together, making this solidified protagonist that really works in this story. I was genuinely surprised to see that there's reminders written into the story that Master Chief has gone through some stuff, and you can just tell by the way he interacts with characters, through some of the dialogue that comes up, or through some of the things that aren't said, that Master Chief has changed based off of his journeys and experiences that he's had in other games. And having this version of the Master Chief who has become wary because of his previous experiences is something we really like. It's just something that could have been skipped over, but there was a lot of attention to figuring out how to handle this character that was done incredibly well. There's two other characters though that may also completely steal the show when it comes to the story, which definitely are the weapon and also the pilot. We don't want to go into spoiler territory, but when you play through this game, you're going to find for yourself that both of these characters are incredibly likable, and all in all, just add for a really great ensemble cast feeling with these three characters, and it's just something that's really well done. Now, we fully expected Halo Infinite to go the route of having a mostly self-contained story to kind of bring everyone back into a grounded level for where Halo's going to go into the future, especially with Halo Infinite supposedly being a platform for 10 years of Halo content, meaning we fully expect the story to be elaborated on in the next couple of years through Halo Infinite. We do think Halo Infinite did a really great job at just setting up a base place to start the story and kind of restart where the narrative is going to go moving forward. And I think this evolution in Halo feels really right this time around, because while the narrative is very strong, they made equal steps to make sure that the campaign side of things was pushing the envelope and going in places that we had never seen before. Now, obviously, there is this open world element to Halo Infinite, which a lot of people were excited about, but it actually was something Luke and I were more concerned about, because some of our favorite levels from previous Halo games are more of those tighter linear levels, and we didn't want this game to necessarily feel like just an open world game just filled with Halo type content. We still wanted this to feel like an actual true Halo game. So I will say we were actually pleasantly surprised to find that there's a great mix of this open world concept, but also there's some linear levels in there as well. We actually made it a point to count out how many of each types of levels there were so that we could maybe cross-check and compare it to previous Halos in one way or another. What we found was, in total, there were about 9 or so linear levels that are completely self-contained outside of the open world, which is like the length of a regular Halo campaign already, but then there's about 6 levels that utilize the open world aspect of Halo Infinite as main levels from the narrative perspective. Then, of course, besides those 6 levels that utilize the open world as the sandbox for exploring and traversing through a larger level for the story, there's a ton of side quests and little extra things to do that really can be a completely optional experience if you want it to be, or something that can add a ton of replayability back into the game, or just to really bolster up your experience as you go through. There's a lot of different things you can do, and there's little rewards along the way you can get, like picking up power-ups for your Spartan. It's pretty cool. Now, of course, with the limited time we had to actually play the game, and also the fact we're trying to get all these achievements, we kind of prioritized what was most important to us, which was the narrative overall, and of course the gameplay that ties to the main story. So we, for the most part, just went beginning to end, and we only stopped and maybe did a couple of side quests in our main playthrough, and then after we beat the game, we went back and played through a ton of the other types of side quest content. So with story being our #1 priority, we played through on easy difficulty and only stopped occasionally for a few little side quests that kind of showed up along the way. And for both of us, we had overall times beginning to end clocking in around 7.5 hours, which for a Halo game is actually really good. Mind you, this is already the easiest difficulty, and while we weren't going at a super leisurely pace, we definitely weren't stopping and doing all of these side quests along the way. So this is actually a Halo campaign that you can spend a ton of time playing. It exists in a much larger scale than a lot of the other Halo games we've seen in previous entries. I think it's really cool when it comes to things like the gameplay and the sandbox that there's just a lot of options how you approach enemies, like with a lot of Halo games, but it seems to almost be expanded upon more. You have a lot of options to take things more sneakily, or just kind of go in guns blazing. And even in some of those indoor linear levels that were detached from the open world, you can choose to go through and clear every enemy, or sometimes you can just run through to the next door if that's what you want to do. There are some sections where you have to clear all the enemies, but for the most part, it was fun having the freedom to pick and choose the speed you want to go through when you're just kind of playing through the game. Now, of course, this is an open world game, and while we kind of talked about the levels that are linear in the open world that are more tied to the story, there is still the open world component to this game. Basically, anything you see is an area that you can mostly go and explore, and you're gonna run into other things like banished controlled areas that you need to clear out that give you access to a lot of things like vehicle deployment or a weapon armory. They do also help set up things for fast travel, and once again, this is kind of a part of the bigger open world mechanic that exists alongside, outside, and within the main storyline that is still more linear, which is something we really like. They didn't throw away the idea of having a Halo story that has these specific beats in favor of shoehorning it into an open world environment, which was something we're pretty happy about. There's definitely a lot of little things hidden along the way, like an armor core to upgrade Master Chief, maybe some audio logs that can help expand on some of the mysteries that are going on Zeta Halo, and of course, there's the regular Easter eggs and skulls that Halo are known for. So the game obviously has the working pieces to already be an outstanding experience, and then they really just kind of polished it up with having really fun gameplay. The movement system feels great. The grapple hook, surprisingly, is this core mechanic to Halo Infinite, and it works so well here. It makes me really wish I had the grapple mechanic in all of the previous Halo games. With how smooth and fluid it feels here, it's just a lot of fun. Matter of fact, in the first level of the game, I accidentally fell outside of the map and then got a checkpoint there, and then I kept dying, so I realized the only way I could survive is if I grappled my way to this wall on the outside border of the map, and essentially I spent 45 minutes just learning the grapple mechanic and climbing up as high as I could, and I was able to scale my way back into the main course of the map that I was supposed to be in. And as you guys probably know, stuff like this is my absolute favorite part of Halo. Just getting that freedom to break out of a map and find your way back in. That experience doesn't only happen when you break out into an area you're not supposed to. The entire game is built with this exploration concept in mind, and it works really well. It's fun in the open world to traverse any distance, even if you don't have a vehicle, because this grapple hook just makes movement so much fun. You can just kind of see the ground up ahead and just whip yourself closer to it, and it just feels really solid through and through. I'm really happy about it. But ultimately, if we have to put a big verdict on Halo Infinite, it's a really fun game. It has a good story that has a ton of mystery that unravels as you play through it, and it does reach a satisfying finale. And at this point, what more could we possibly ask for? Because it seems like Halo Infinite made it a point to really expand on a lot of the core gameplay mechanics and provide a great story and put that all together, and they did a really great job with it. Now, of course, there are a few little things that I'm very nitpicky about, and I wanted to kind of wait until the end of the video to just point out a few of the things that I wish maybe went a different way that didn't. Like, firstly, the way that the levels work in the game. We really did praise it for the fact that there's a difference between the linear levels and the open world levels, and you kind of can interact and go between them all. But as it stands right now, or at least in our review copy of the game, you have no option to go back and replay campaign levels, which seemed really jarring to us. So the only way you can go back and replay a campaign level is if you start a brand new save file, and you do have the option for 4 save slots, just easily accessible. But it was really weird that I couldn't go back and just replay a campaign level without starting a fresh save, and this could be really annoying if you're trying to do things like collectible hunt, because if you pass the level and you didn't get all of the collectibles, it looks like you really don't have an option to go back other than starting a brand new save. That's not something I'm a fan of. I do have a feeling though that when they finally do release co-op, it may then be included. Though, as you guys know, co-op was something that I've been pretty vocal about, being really saddened that we wouldn't be able to play this game co-op at launch. It definitely did kind of cut this game at the knees for me, because co-op is such an integral part of how I like to experience Halo, but I will say that the campaign was strong enough to still provide a great experience, even though my favorite feature wasn't included on day one. Then another little thing also, there's no last checkpoint feature, which is really tedious and annoying, just because it's something that's been a staple in all the Halo games. It's a really useful tool in general if you're playing through a game, and just having this last checkpoint feature removed or just not included is really odd. It's just an odd decision. You can restart levels, but you can't just revert to last checkpoint if you get yourself stuck. So another thing that we hope maybe will get added in a future update, because we don't feel like that's asking for too much beyond what's already in the game, because the game itself, beginning to end, is really well polished. So I was pretty satisfied and surprised with the level of polish that this game actually had. Okay, and then there's a couple other little gripes that I do have. Now, as much as people have expected Halo Infinite to be this brand new fresh start and kind of a soft reboot to the series, obviously the state of the Halo universe where Halo 5 ended off was a pretty unique place, and they did a great job at kind of writing around some parts and then backing into it to reveal a lot of what's been going on in the Halo universe. But it is a little jarring coming out of the Halo 5 ending, where you see this cliffhanger ending with a ton of different characters that were introduced in Halo 5 or brought back for Halo 5, and this larger cast of characters have their stories and their arcs significantly reduced, or in some cases even non-existent. And that also goes for a lot of the plot lines and storylines that were kind of these important subplots that were going on during Halo 5 Guardians. I get they wanted to pull the story back and they wanted to really tell this fresh story that gives everyone a fair starting point, but I can't help but to feel like a lot of really popular characters kind of got the short end of the stick. But I will be optimistic and I will remain hopeful that we will see story DLC elaborating on what's going on with a ton of these characters that are iconic to the Halo franchise at this point. Now also, all in all, throughout the campaign, you're going to see the experiences you would expect from a Halo game. A lot of those iconic types of levels will show up. You're like, oh yeah, this is this type of level battle in Halo Infinite, but some levels don't show up again, and it is a little disappointing. Like, while there are a lot of big open world levels where you do have access to vehicles, there's no level in the game that really utilizes this like large scale vehicle battling, which was something that was really awesome whenever they did it in Halo 2, 3, and Reach. And obviously with the idea of letting us approach battles and situations however we want in the open world, it did to an extent kind of negate the necessity to have some of these larger than life battles or these large spaces where you utilize vehicles for a specific mission, and I was kind of missing that. But I think the biggest takeaway and the most important thing to appreciate here with Halo Infinite is that for the first time in a really long time, I genuinely think a lot of people are going to fully enjoy this Halo campaign, and Halo Infinite will be regarded as one of the better Halo campaigns out of the entire franchise. Even with the little issues or some of the gameplay styles not necessarily translating into this game, it leaves the door open and the franchise open for a lot of possibilities down the road, especially if they do kind of live up to the expectation that there will be some bigger story DLCs down the road. These are all things that could happen in the current sandbox that Halo Infinite provides. So any type of future content could really go in any direction. So it's not like this is the last iteration of Halo we're gonna have for 10 years or something like that. So because of that, I'm willing to be much more forgiving on little things like large scale vehicle combat not playing as big of a role, because there's still the door down the road for this to open up. And they still provided a really meaningful story, despite the fact that a lot of the characters and storylines from previous Halo games don't really play a role in this plotline. Now, what will be really interesting is to see how our opinions on this game change in the following months, especially when co-op comes out, and especially now that we'll be able to go back and play the game on a real difficulty and experience the game at a much slower pace. It'll be interesting to see how we kind of deem this game later on outside of our first impressions, but I'm thinking the game deserves somewhere around an 8 to an 8.5 out of 10 if I was to try to use this 1 to 10 metric, which I really don't like to use. The game's good. Play the game. I think you're gonna like it, and then we'll regroup in a couple months and see how we feel this game fits into the grand scheme of the Halo franchise. And now, with literally just a couple of days before Halo Infinite fully releases, we got some achievements we gotta get done, so stay tuned because we got some last minute achievement hunting and lasso running that's been going on, and it's been absolutely chaotic. It's gonna be down to the wire whether or not we actually get the achievements done before Halo Infinite fully releases at 10 a.m. on December 8th, but we'll be documenting it on video form and get those edited and turned around as fast as we can. But we are sticking to our goal of trying to get every single achievement before December 8th at 10 a.m. So we'd love to know your thoughts. If you have questions about the game, we'll answer what we can in the comments down below. Or actually, if you just watch this far in the video, can you just type Halo is fun in the comments, so then I can look and be like, hey look, this person watched this far into the video. What a Chad. I don't know, I'm trying something different. Anyways, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. We'll see you guys all next time with a brand new video.